advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Jung's Garden Center, not WBEV, ESPN, or Good Karma Brands. Welcome back in to Hometown today on 95.3 WBEV. Charlie Dern here with you this morning alongside Dick Zondag, the garden doctor.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining. I'm looking forward to this because I was kind of sharing off the air. Well, one, I don't have a yard right now, but then two, I only really have gardening experience growing up, helping out around the yard with my parents. Mostly mulching was my duty, was getting that mulch down. So I've got my notebook out. I'm ready to take some notes. I'm ready to learn. So 920-885-4446 is the call line. Jack Wilsky's standing by, ready to take your calls. And then, we'll get them answered. So make sure to give a call in at 920-885-4446 or shoot us a text, 920-887-9595, and we'll get all your questions asked. So, again, with Dick Zondag, the garden doctor, here on 95.3 WBEV Hometown today. And we can start wherever you'd like. I know that we have a lot that we can cover, especially now that it's fall and getting closer to, it's starting to really cool off here.
Yeah, things are getting cool. The plants know that it's time to get ready for winter. And so actually the process started about a month and a half ago when the days started getting shorter and the nights getting longer. It's the first signal that the plant has that winter is coming. And so at that time, it goes into what's called a quiescent period, which the plant slows down. It doesn't put on any new growth, but it can be that period can be interrupted. So from about the middle of August on, you should not be pruning. You should not be watering excessively. And now we did have a really dry fall, so you do want to water just to keep the plants healthy. And fertilizer, that can interrupt that quiescent period. And so if it is interrupted and new growth is started, that reverses all of the preparations that the plant has for making it hardy for the winter. So, late summer, early fall is not the time to do a lot of excessive pruning. With roses, you don't want to do, if you want to take a bud or two off a plant to bring indoors to enjoy, it's fine. But for the most part, you want to leave those roses alone so that they can start preparing for winter. And then they, we get that first frost, which I think we had some in Randolph last Monday. Then I think we got down below the freezing point because there was a lot of frost on my window when I went to work in the morning. That's the second signal for the plants to really, tighten up. And so I think by now, most of the plants have gone dormant enough so that they're not going to reverse that. So if there is some pruning that you want to do on your fruit trees or on your shade trees, if you want to do a little bit of pruning, if there are some branches that are too low on the tree, because with trees and with shrubs and things, a branch that comes out of the trunk of a tree will not get any higher than it is at the time that it's set down. So once it's 2 or 3 inches below the top of the tree, that height is set for a lifetime. So if you've got a shade tree with branches that are at 2 or 3 or 4 foot level, probably a good time to start trimming them up so that you get the crown of the tree up in the air a little bit, so when you're mowing you don't have to worry about hitting the tree, and then away you go. And then too, with the watering and with the fertilizing, now that the plant is pretty much dormant, now you can do the watering. And plants, when they're going into the winter, especially evergreens, need to be hydrated so that, because they don't lose their leaves, they don't lose their needles, they need to be hydrated so that they have an adequate amount of hydration for the winter. So it doesn't mean going out and watering every day. It means once a week, put a bucket full of water. Also a good time to fertilize, because the roots of a plant never go dormant. So as long as the soil is warm enough, the roots are growing. So if you're planting something new, Now is a good time to do that because the roots will have a chance to establish, and so next spring when the soil does warm up, the plant can start growing immediately. So, and fertilization the same way. You can do the fertilization now. Probably not going to do a lot of good this fall, but then it'll be available for the root system to grow all winter long, and then in the springtime when it does start to grow, that fertility will be there, so the plant can take off right away and start doing its thing in a good way.
I've got a lot of follow-ups for you there. I've jotted things down kind of periodically there, but we do already have a caller on line one. Welcome on to Hometown Today and the Garden Doctor. Hello?
Do you have to turn it on?
Good morning. You're on Hometown Today.
Hello.
Yes.
I've got a question with rhubarb.
Okay.
A friend of mine told me it's too early to cover it. I should wait until after several good frost. And what should I cover it with? And then my other question would be, my Honeycrisp apple trees were so full of apples this year that the upper branches, I had the lower ones supported so they wouldn't break,
Right.
but the upper branches started snapping off.
Okay.
Can I trim them, and how severely can I trim the tree? Because some of these branches are fairly large that broke.
Yeah.
They need to be taken out.
Yeah, anything that broke, you want to get it back to where it isn't broken. Not going to hurt the tree to do that.
It's going to look terrible.
What I would do, though, is if you get a real heavy load of fruit on a tree, it tends to make the tree cyclic. So, the flower buds are being laid down right now for next year's crop. And so when a tree is over-fruited, sometimes it doesn't lay down many flower buds for next year. And so that tree may or may not have a lot of fruit on it. So if you have a tree that has a lot of fruit on it, you probably about the 4th of July should thin it down a little bit so that it doesn't overtax the tree. Because if you do get it into a situation where one year it has a lot of fruit on it, the next year it may not have much fruit on it, and so it builds up all the carbohydrates and things that it has, and it sets a lot of blooms again, and so the next year it will have a heavy load of fruit. And the other problem with having lots of fruit on a tree is that the fruit doesn't get the same size as it would if it had a normal amount of apples on it.
I talked to you this spring about picking a lot of little apples off, and
Yep.
I did. I picked off, I'll bet you, at least half of the apples because they were growing in clumps of 3 and 4.
Sure.
So I picked a lot of them off, and this fall my apples were the size of baseballs and softballs. They were just huge.
Well, you did the right thing then.
But I couldn't get up in the tree to pick enough off those upper branches, and they just snapped the branches off.
Yeah. No, you want to have a clean cut so that if wherever it breaks, it would be a jagged cut, and that's where you get disease and insects hiding. And so, I would get a ladder and get up into that tree and cut it back so that the branches are solid, and the tree will respond to that.
And then, as far as covering the rhubarb, what should I use?
If it's an established patch of rhubarb, you really don't need to cover it because rhubarb is very hardy. But if you are going to cover it, I would use clean hay or straw, and then you'd wait until the leaves have been frosted and have died back, and then you'd cover it. And with rhubarb too, now's a good time to divide it. If you've got large clumps of rhubarb. Rhubarb is a heavy feeder. You want to fertilize it quite a bit in spring, but then it gets a large clump, and the large clump tends to throw out a lot of flowers. So if you're getting rhubarb flowers in your clump, it's time to divide it. And the way you do that is you just take a spade shovel and go right down in the middle of the clump and dig half of it out and let it expose to the sunlight. the part that you leave in the ground for a week or so. The part that you take out, you can divide up and replant. But yeah, I would wait until the ground gets cold before you cover established perennials like rhubarb.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for the call.
Yeah, thank you. My grandparents in Wausau, they do a lot of gardening with rhubarb, and my grandma is a really great baker, and she makes great rhubarb muffins, bread, really anything. And
Rhubarb is really an excellent fruit or stem to make stuff with. I mean, rhubarb crunch, we love it at home, and the pies, and you can mix it with like apples, and rhubarb freezes real well too. So we have a lot of rhubarb in our freezer, so you can take it out in the wintertime, and it makes a great pie, or you can make muffins and things like that with it. So it's a very versatile plant, but it also it likes to be fertilized, and it likes to be divided every 3 or 4 years at least.
Okay, I didn't know that part about it. When I last visited them in Wausau, they're snowbirds, so they're down in Florida now.
Sure.
But when I last went up there, we just picked it off the ground, dipped it in some sugar, and then just ate it straight off the thing. And that was a good way of doing it too. What makes it? You use the word a hardy plant. That you didn't necessarily need to cover it.
Yeah, it means that the plant itself is suited for this climate.
Oh.
That if you don't do anything with it, it would survive and thrive. All plants have a zone where they can grow, and so we're in zone 4, which is a pretty harsh climate, and so a lot of people will plant zone 5 plants or sometimes zone 6, and with those you have to be a little more careful about how you treat them, covering them for the winter and things like that, so they have a little bit of protection. But most fruit trees and shade trees and evergreens and things like that are perfectly hardy in our area, so you don't have to do much with them as far as protecting them for the winter.
I see, because then, when I'm visiting my grandparents then in Florida, if I'm going there in January or February, we're covering up the bushes and trees and stuff like that with blankets while we're down there.
Yeah, because those are evergreen. They actually the leaves don't ever drop. They oranges and lemons and tangelos and things like that. But if you're going to get a frost, you've got to somehow protect them a little bit.
I see.
And throwing a blanket over them just preserves the heat that's in the inside of the tree. We do that in the springtime too. Right. And right now too, I've already covered some of my annuals with blankets. Monday night, when we had the frost, I went out and took a couple of old picnic table cloths and covered the petunias and the sweet potato vines and some of the plants that I have around the house, because if they get frosted, it usually kills the foliage. And so by using a roll cover, we have roll cover, which is a material that will preserve the heat underneath it. And roll cover is excellent for covering strawberries too for the winter. So, but if you're going to get a frost like we had on Monday night, if you just cover the plants or cover your planter with a blanket or even an old piece of plastic or something like that, preserves the heat that's in the soil and keeps the plants from getting frosted. Where if they're out in the open and they get down into the high 20s, it's probably going to doom those plants and they'll die.
Unfortunately, so yeah. We have a caller again on line 1. Welcome into Hometown Today in the Garden Doctor here on 95.3 WBEV.
Hello. I have 2 questions. I bought an apple tree in 2000 and 2020, and I have not got any blossoms on it yet. And we've got it planted next to an older McIntosh tree that we have. Is that the wrong kind of tree that they won't how should I say, one will start the other one to blossom?
No, and the tree has the tree grown already?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. See, what happens with fruit trees is you don't want to fruit them the first 2 or 3 years, and some trees are precocious. They do flower and fruit those first 2 or 3 years, but some fruit trees are very happy where they are, and they like to stay kids. You know, they like to stay juvenile. So what you want to do is put that tree under a little bit of stress, and unfortunately you've missed that for this year. So if it has flowers and fruit next year, it's not because of what I'm telling you now. But if they don't have any next spring, what you want to do is, and you do this at night because you don't want your neighbors to think you're nuts, but you take a pipe or a bat, a baseball bat, and you go out and just whack the bark good and hard all the way around the tree. And what that does is it breaks up some of the connective tissue between the top and the bottom, the xylem and the phloem that you've learned about when you were in grade school. But what it does is it disrupts some of that flow of things up and down the tree, which puts the tree under a little bit of stress. And the next fall, it's willing to start becoming an adult, which means it will start producing fruit.
Okay. All right. Because I know I heard you say that one other time, and then I hit it with the handle of my rake when I was working out there.
No, that's not enough. You're being too gentle with the tree. You got to take a pipe or a baseball bat or something that you can really wrap it with. The way that you can really do it is to take a carpet knife or a 1-inch razor blade, and about 2.5 feet off the ground or 2 feet off the ground, you just take that knife and you go right down to the wood, and you go about halfway to two-thirds of the way around the tree. Now, you don't want to remove any of the bark. You just want to make a sharp incision. And there again, what you're doing is you're disrupting the flow of sugars down the tree and water up the tree. And the injury will be healed almost immediately, but it will tell the tree, come on, guy, you weren't planted to be a pretty shade tree. You want to be a fruit tree. And so that will encourage the tree in the fall to lay down the blossoms for the next year. And very seldom, if ever, when that's done, the tree will not produce fruit.
Okay, all right. Another question. My rhubarb patch that I have has died down to nothing. I mowed right over it with the lawnmower. Can I plant a new patch in that same spot if we dig that all out and work that up?
Yeah, there's no problem with that.
Okay, and what's the best time to plant rhubarb?
In the spring.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so it has a growing season before it has to go through the winter, although, like I said with the guy that called about rhubarb before, if you've got an established rhubarb plant that you want to divide, now is the time to do it. So now or in very early spring, as soon as the ground thaws out, before any new growth starts. Once you get the leaves and the rhubarb stalks coming, then it's too late to do that. And if there's anything left of the rhubarb that's there, fertilize it, because that'll.
You think it would start coming back? Because all
sure.
I had was little bitty shoots, and we did fertilize it. I thought maybe it was getting too old or something.
No, maybe it just needs to be divided. I mean,
right.
when you have a patch of rhubarb that's never been divided or that you haven't divided in years, the middle tends to rot out and the edges will grow. So you want to divide it. I mean, it sounds like you're punishing the plant for growing, but it's like with peonies too. If you don't divide peonies, the middle gets hollow, and you need to do it. And right now is the time to do peony divisions too.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks for calling.
Yeah,
Bye.
Thanks for calling in. We do need to take a break, but it is fascinating that I've never heard that taking a bat part of it, just whacking the tree with a bat or kind of stabbing it with a you said 1-inch razor. Yeah.
You just you just go around the circumference of the tree about half to 2/3 of the way, and it shocks the tree from being juvenile into adult.
Huh. Yeah, it's like when your TV or your computer's not working, just give it a hit, give it a tap, and
Yep.
then maybe it'll start working.
You don't
better.
want to take a baseball bat
Yeah,
to it,
yeah.
but yeah.
Right. My mom wanted to when it was our video game system growing up. She did want to take a bat to that, that's for sure. Well, we'll take a break here on Hometown Today, but keep your calls and texts coming, 920-885-4446 and 920-887-9595. Charlie Dern and the Garden Doctor here on 95.3 WBEV Hometown Today on 95, powered by Daily Dodge Jack.
From the Slimmerland Furniture Studio, this is 95.3 WBEV Beaver Dam, a Good Karma Brands radio station.
From Beaver Dam Lake to Horicon Marsh and everywhere in between, we're talking about what's important in your hometown. This is Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
All right, and welcome back into Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV. Charlie Dern with you this morning alongside the Garden Doctor, Dick Zondag from Jung's Garden Center. We should talk about the details real quick on like hours, store availability, and all that stuff.
Okay, well,
we should make sure to plug that.
Yeah, we have 6 garden centers, of course. There are 3 in the Madison area, one on the north side of Madison, one on the south side of Madison, one on Northport Drive and on Nesbitt Road, which is just off 151 south of the Beltline. We have one in Sun Prairie. We have one in Stoughton. And then we have one in Randolph, of course, and then one in Stevens Point. And the hours are 10 to 5 Monday through Saturday. The stores in Madison, Stoughton, and Stevens Point are open on Sunday from 10 to 3. And in Randolph, we're closed on Sunday. You know,
Right.
We have a close-knit community, and Sunday's a day people go to church. So we don't open on Sundays in Randolph. And I mean, we have all of the different things that you'll need for your yard. And we've got cleanup tools, the rakes and the shovels and things like that. We have the lawn fertilizer, and now's a good time to, boy, you've kind of missed the first fall fertilization. That should have been done in early September. But now I would say probably in another week or two, the late fall fertilization is one that doesn't have as much nitrogen in, because nitrogen is the first number in the analysis. And that particular element forces growth. You know, the first number is nitrogen, and that has to do with growth. So you don't want the grass to grow a lot now that the weather's getting cold, but it has the phosphorus and the potassium for making a good root system for next spring. So it's called a winterizer type fertilizer. So it's not put on to make the grass grow in the fall, but it's made to make the root health of the plant better through the winter, and then the plant is more going to be ready to go in the springtime when the soil thaws out and the weather starts getting warmer. So winterizing a lawn is now probably now between now and Thanksgiving time is when you want to winterize the lawn for the winter. Then we also have the fall bulbs. We have over 70 varieties of tulips, and you know, you see the tulips that we think of, but then there are the parrot tulips and the Rembrandt tulips and the species tulips, and all of them are a little bit different. The lily flowers, instead of the petal being rounded, they have a pointed petal. The Rembrandt and the parrot tulips have fringed petals, and they're very unusual. So if you want to have something unusual in the springtime, we have those tulip bulbs that you won't find in the box stores, because they just have the regular early tulips and late tulips. We also have about 40 different varieties of daffodils, and daffodils come in colors, not just the yellows that you normally associate with daffodils, but we have some that have yellow ray flowers, and then the cup part of it is white. And we have some pink daffodils that are very light pink. We have some daffodils that only get 6 inches high, and then we have the King Alfreds and the Mount Hoods and the things like that that are a foot and a half tight, and they make nice cut flowers. So we have a large variety of, and then crocus and daffodil. Besides the daffodils and tulips, we have, I think, 10 or 12 different types of crocus, both the species crocus that are the very earliest flowering, and then the regular crocus that you see later on, and many of the other minor bulbs, the Chionodoxa and the muscari and the grape hyacinths and things like that. So, you know, if you want to have those pretty flowers in the springtime that signal spring, now's the time to get them in the ground. I brought along, for those of you that are on the Daily Dodge TV, the thing that makes planting fall bulbs easy. It's an auger. We also have another size auger that's a little bit smaller, but you put it on the end of an electric drill or a battery-powered drill, and you mark on the drill itself when you get down to that 10 or 12 inches that you want to plant the bulbs deep, and then you take the soil out and you drop the bulb in, and it doesn't take any time to plant, 50 bulbs with a bulb planter like this. So we have those available in the garden center. The other thing that we really have in the garden center that a lot of box stores is we have expert gardeners. I mean, you have to have the garden doctor at Young's. We have people that have been gardening their whole lives and can answer the questions. And if they can't, they can come to me or to one of our customer service ladies that do know a lot more about horticulture and things like that. So we not only try to provide a product, but a service, so that people, when they buy something from Jungs, will have good luck with it. And that's another focus of our the Garden Doctor channel on YouTube. I've done videos on raspberries and strawberries and how you cover strawberries for the winter. Using the roll cover instead of straw. They can grow underneath that in the springtime, and so when you uncover them, they're almost ready to flower and fruit, where if you just cover them with straw, they'll be like 2 or 3 weeks later.
Oh.
So, there are lots of different things,
difference.
on the YouTube channel that you can not only hear my voice, but you can see how I actually do it in my garden, and, how to plant asparagus or strawberries, or what you do with potatoes. I mean, I had the nice harvest of potatoes this year, and did it a little bit different this year than I've done in the past. Most people will dig a trench and put them in the trench and then backfill. And what I did this year is I worked the garden up, and then I made a trench and put the pieces in the trench, but then I covered them with straw, and I covered the trench with compost, so that the pieces had a lot of rich soil around them, which made them grow like crazy, and fertilize them with a high nitrogen fertilizer, because what you want to do when you initially plant a potato is you want to get the top growth so that you have a lot of green, and then later on, when it starts forming the potatoes, then you back off with the fertility, and you make sure that you have the vines covered with, at least the base of the vines covered, because the potatoes don't grow any deeper than what the piece that you plant, but then you have to cover them with hay or straw or soil so that the potato tubers themselves are not exposed to the light, because if they do, because potatoes are a piece of stem tissue, they'll turn green if they're exposed to light, and that green is not good to eat, so you have to cut that off before you do. But there's a video on that. So, I dug my carrots last week, and I've got them in the refrigerator now. They're set, and actually we had a few carrots left over from last year, so they're a year old, and they don't look real great, but you peel them, and they're perfect for eating and stuff. So
Cool.
Ways of having your garden produce things that you can use all winter long. And then last night I dug my glads. I had a couple of rows of glads in the field, and we undercut them, so I went out and pulled them out and cut the tops off, and they'll be stored in screen bottom flats or in mesh bags for the winter, and then they'll be planted out again next spring. So lots of things that you can learn on the Garden Doctor channel, or if you just listen to the Garden Doctor program.
Definitely make sure to check that out. I know I'm a visual learner a lot of the time, so yeah, looking up those kind of videos and then just seeing it done, a lot of times that clicks easier for me, more so than just hearing it.
Yeah.
Or even doing it myself. So like watching it and just the repetition of it. Oh, and we do have a text on the line. Jack, what is somebody wondering, or what is their question for the Garden Doctor?
We have two, actually. First up, we've got Sarah, who asks, when should I stop mowing my lawn for the winter?
Yeah, that's a good question, too. You'll notice now that the weather's getting cold. I mean, when it's cool, grass loves the cool season, and so it starts growing in August, and that's why we talked about a little bit about grass, that's when you want to start fertilizing it, because you want to favor the grass over the weeds, because the weeds are slowing down because they like the warm weather. So by fertilizing in August, you get the grass growing, it'll crowd the weeds out. And if you've got some pesky weeds like plantain or dandelions or creeping Charlie, now's a good time to put the Weed Beater Ultra on them, because that'll weaken them. Because what that does is it stimulates them to grow. And, we talked about plants going from, being active to being passive. The weeds want to get ready for winter too, but then you put this Weed Beater Ultra on them, which stimulates them to grow, and they start growing, and then all of a sudden winter comes and it kills them. As far as mowing the lawn, probably every other week. Set your mower a little higher than you normally do. You want to keep mowing the lawn because the mowing will not counteract the dormancy part of the lawn. So keep your lawns looking nice, get them a little bit longer. And with the leaves starting to fall too, the grass needs to have that sunlight, and so you don't want to let those leaves lay on your lawn too long, because then it blocks the sunlight and stops the photosynthesis that the grass is doing. So take your mower and mow the leaves up, start composting them, because if you have some grass clippings mixed in with those leaves that are falling, they're going to compost much faster. And because you're running them through the mower, you're cutting them up, making smaller pieces out of them, the compost is going to work better. So you want to run the leaves through your mower and mix the grass with them, and then do the compost pile.
All right, and then what's the other question, Jack?
All right, this one comes from Brenda, and it says, I have some canna and gladiolus in my flower bed. When is the best time to dig them, and how do I store them?
Okay. Again, we did some glads last night, where they undercut they're in the field with the daylilies that we're digging for next spring. Daylilies don't have to be dug, but we're digging them because we sell them in the springtime. So, so daylilies are perfectly hardy. You don't have to do anything with them. But they were in the daylily field, so they undercut them. And so with glads, what you want to do is just take the tops and cut the top off right close to the bulb, and then put them in a mesh bag over winter, because they do need to have circulation around them. If you've got a lot of dirt on them, it's probably a good idea to wash that dirt off and then let them sit on your driveway so that they dry out well, because you want the bulbs dry when they go into storage so that they don't mold over the winter time. With cannas and with caladiums and begonias and the bulbs that will not make it through the winter, you want them to get frosted. So in a lot of cases that's happened already, although you want to have a little harder freeze, I think, than what we had on Monday night. But then you want to dig them up, and the way that you store cannas and begonias and caladiums and things like that is with cannas, you'll probably have a pretty big rhizome to store. So just put that in a cardboard box or a bushel basket and cover it with peat moss. Not real dry peat moss, but you don't want it real wet either, but just enough to keep it from dehydrating over winter. You want to keep it in a cool area. You don't want it, if you don't heat your garage, you don't want it in the garage because it'll freeze out there. But if you're heating your garage, I have a newer home, so I put floor heat in the garage too, because that way when you get out of bed in the morning, you have a car that's not full of snow and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But then you keep it I keep mine at the lowest possible setting on the thermostat at 45 degrees. Perfect place for storing cannas and glads and begonias. With begonias, what you want to do is get the top frosted, and the same way with caladiums and the other bulbs. And then you cut the tops off right next to the bulb, and you basically do the same thing. You put them in a paper bag or in some kind of a container, not in plastic, because plastic doesn't breathe, and if you put them in plastic, they'll probably mold. And then cover them or put them in a peat moss or a peat and sand mix over winter. And then in March late February, early March, you can start them in pots so that when they're when the weather is past the frost, danger of frost, then you can set them out and they're already growing. So really easy if you know what you're doing.
There you go. Yeah. Well, we do need to take a quick break here on Hometown Today, and with the Garden Doctor here on 95.3 WBEV. But when we're back, we'll continue answering any questions, and we'll continue talking about all things fall and winter when it comes to gardening with the Garden Doctor here on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
This is Randy, owner of Professional Floor Covering, and you're listening to Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
57 degrees here on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Charlie Dern with you this morning alongside Dick Zondag, the Garden Doctor over at Junk Garden Center where there are tons of locations. I only had a couple written down here. I guess the couple in the area, but yeah, they're all over the area. So make sure to head over to Jung's Garden Center for all your gardening needs, answering all your questions. That's what we're also doing here today. So 920-887-9595 is the call number, and 920-887-9595 is the studio text line, where you can text in any questions as well. So Jack Wilski is standing by, ready to answer any and all questions. But today it's a high near 67 degrees and sunny all day long. So I think it's the perfect day to get outside and get in your garden, right, Dick?
Yeah, no sweat today.
No sweat today.
No. It's enjoyable going out and getting your lawn done, and you want to get in the garden. I don't recommend rototilling in the fall, because if you want the ground to be nice and friable in the springtime, use a shovel and leave the clumps. Don't break them up, because if they're exposed more to the freezing and thawing that you get in the wintertime, it will improve the soil texture significantly. And the other thing with fall gardening, one of the things that really makes a garden grow well is to have a nice high amount of organic matter in the soil. And in the fall, you get an abundance of organic matter falling from the trees. The weeds that were in your garden, hopefully you've taken them out already, because they're pretty much in seed now. But even those will add to the organic matter. And the way that when I'm doing just leaves, because leaves are almost all what we call browns, they don't have a lot of nutrients in them. What I do is I run them through the lawnmower so that you get the constituents cut into smaller pieces, because it gives it more surface area for the microorganisms to work on. But I make a layer of about 6 inches of leaves or grass clippings or weeds from the garden, and then I put some fertilizer on it, because the fertilizer will activate the microorganisms. They need the nutrients that the leaves have withdrawn from the plants, or into the plants. And so by putting the fertilizer on the top of that 6-inch layer, it gets those microorganisms working well. If the leaves are dry, then you want to water it, because there again you want to have some moisture there so that the microorganisms work better, because they always work better when in a moist environment. Now, not real wet, but moist. And then if you haven't done composting, we do sell a thing called Compost Maker that has the microorganisms in that are needed to do that. But if you've done composting and added the stuff to your soil, those microorganisms are in the soil. So I just with my garden, I just take a shovel full of soil or a couple shovels full of soil, put that on top, and then I start over again, 6 inches of leaves or straw or whatever, and then the fertilizer, the water if needed, and then the soil again. And you keep doing that and building it up. And what you'll see in a week or 10 days is that the pile starts to shrink, because the the microorganisms are starting to work. And the reason that you compost is that you're removing the cellulose that the plant has made, and that cellulose is broken down quite easily, even in the soil. But you want that done before you put it in the soil. And then when it gets to a certain point, then you want to mix that up so that the stuff that's on the outside that's kind of been dry gets to the inside, and the plants the microbes can work on that also. So, and the way that you can tell if the microorganism or if the compost is ready to add to the garden is if you don't recognize what went into the compost pile. The compost is ready to add to the garden, and the more compost you add to the garden, the better your plants are going to grow, the bigger your vegetables are going to be, the less watering you have to do, because that organic matter tends to hold on to the water and the nutrients. And so it really is beneficial for both the texture and the growth of the plants to have that organic matter in your soil.
And I do want to ask a couple questions about compost because it's always been interesting, and I've never gotten my parents to fully dive into it in our backyard. But we do have a caller on line one, so let's get to their question first. Good morning and welcome to Hometown Today.
Good morning. I got a couple questions here, if you don't mind here, Dick, please. Number one, is it too late now to just trim up some more of the shrubs, just like your everyday, I don't know, just like in front of our home here, whatever. Is that for trimming shrubs? Is it better just to do it in spring or whatever, or should I wait now?
That's it's a very easy question. If the plant blooms, the shrub blooms before the 1st of July, the flower buds are on the plants right now. And so things like lilacs, mock orange, bridal wreath, spirea, those particular plants, the flowers are initiated in the fall. And if you prune them in the fall, you're not going to have a flower in the springtime.
Okay.
So those particular plants you prune right after they flower.
Okay, all right.
Because that way when they're initiated in the fall, then you're not cutting them off. If they bloom after the 1st of July, you can prune them anytime because they blossom on what's called new wood, on the new growth. And so things like roses, some of the spireas, some of the hydrangeas, they blossom on new wood. So you can cut them back anytime you want, and they'll still bloom.
Well, when I said shrubs, I mean even like a hedge, I don't know what those are really called, but like a.
Yeah, hedges you can prune any time because even though all plants have flowers, most of the hedging materials have insignificant flowers. You don't see them if you don't know what you're looking for, so they can be pruned any time. And if a hedge does get overgrown, if it gets too high, and you want to, and the bottom is bare, what you can do with that is take a chainsaw to it and cut it back to 6 inches from the ground and start it over again. If you're going to do that, I would do that in the spring, not in the fall.
Okay, that portion. But otherwise, right now, if I just wanted to reshape it, kind of like it's kind of getting overgrown again.
You can do it right now because I think the plants are dormant enough that they're not going to start to regrow.
Okay, good. And I've asked this question in the past, but fertilizing for winterizing, granules, just feed, not weed and feed. What's your recommendation again to put that into the ground?
Okay, so if you're doing a fall, this is with the lawns. If you're doing a late fall fertilization, the bag itself will say winterizer. So if you're buying fertilizer and it says 20, 30, 20, that's not the fertilizer you want to add right now because that you're wasting the nitrogen in it. It'll probably be more like a 5, 20, 30 or something like that, where the first number is much smaller because you don't want to encourage the lawn to grow now. You want it to, the roots and the stuff that's underground to get healthy, and that's done by the second and third number, the phosphorus and the potassium.
Okay, all right. And would you wait yet until closer to the end of October, or would you get it in now just so that it has a chance to work its way into the ground? Or what's your thought process on that?
Yeah, you're in the very beginning part of the winterizer season. Yeah, if I were doing it on my own lawn, I would probably wait another week or two.
And then you'd put it in.
And you can do it any time up until Thanksgiving.
Okay, so it really doesn't matter. Okay. All right, and I guess one last question, if you don't mind. Real quick here, we have some issues with poison ivy, and if I put leaves, you were just talking about composting and everything, but if I'm putting all my bags of leaves on top of that, I've tried to spray, but some areas I haven't been able to hit. But if I put leaves over the top of that, will that encourage, or what's the effect, do you think, by putting leaves on? Will that suffocate it out more during the winter months, or will that actually keep it warmer? That it'll be actually better for the poison ivy plant to grow the next.
I wouldn't put anything on poison ivy except 2,4-D or one of the brush killers.
Okay.
You know,
'Cause always I'm
and whatever you do, don't burn the leaves of
no.
poison
No.
ivy, because the chemicals that cause the blistering and will volatilize, and you get it in your lungs, and you're in big trouble. So
Right.
yeah, with poison ivy, leaves of 3, let them be, because and then if you're going to try to pull the vines down, because poison ivy does vine, be sure you're wearing rubber gloves, and then throw the gloves away, because that irritant that you have that causes the blistering is bad news. But we do have brush killers that you can spray on poison ivy, and I'm not sure, if there's still leaves there, you can still do it, but it would probably be more effective next spring when they first start to grow.
Okay.
But yeah, poison ivy is nothing to
No.
be friendly with.
Mm-hmm. And by putting all these leaves I've sucked up off our lawn, but then am I kind of like keeping it warmer, like you might say, during the winter months? That'll be actually more active in spring again because of all that
I think
layer.
that's what would happen. And then the leaves that you put on there are going to be worthless, because you don't want to use those in your garden either.
No.
So
Okay.
I think compost the leaves, get a brush killer and kill it with that.
Okay.
And then use a lot of protective equipment
Okay.
if you try to
All
remove
right.
it. But
All right.
I would kill it first and then remove it.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I appreciate all your help. I
Yep.
appreciate all the time. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for calling in. And it looks like we have another caller on the line. Caller on line 2. Welcome to Hometown Today with the Garden Doctor.
Yes, I have a question. I have a maple tree that's about 6 years old, 7 years old, and it's got 2 shoots coming off the top of it. It must be about 5-6 feet tall. Should one of them be cut off or not?
Yeah, if you've got a dual leader, if you've got 2 branches that are fighting for being the leader of the tree, especially with silver maple, you want to keep that single leader as high as you can, because it depends on the maple that you have. But if it's a silver maple, having a split leader, you're going to have a split tree in probably 10 years. So
Okay.
I would get up and try to take one of the 2 off. If are they both vertical?
Straight up, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Take one of them off, because you want to keep that central leader going in a single situation as long as possible, as high in the tree as possible. And the thing you got to remember too is that branches on a tree never get any higher than what they are. So, keep the bottom branches pruned off so that they're higher up, and where you want the crown of the tree to start, that's where you leave the first horizontal branching.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks for calling. And we do have more calls and texts that we can get to here on Hometown Today with the Garden Doctor. But we do need to take a quick break, so we'll be right back, and we'll continue answering everyone's calls and questions on 920-885-4446 and 920-887-9595 on the text line. So we'll be back with more here on Hometown Today, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
and professional floor covering, bringing together friends and neighbors on Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
All right, and welcome back into Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV. Charlie Dern with you this morning alongside Dick Zondag, the garden doctor over at Junk Garden Center. And let's jump right into it. We've got a caller and a text. Jack, what is the text line question?
On the text line, we've got a question from Joe that asks, is it a good idea to plant tomato plants in the pot?
In the pot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. If you do use containers for tomatoes, you want to use a soil that's probably more peat than it is regular soil. You wouldn't want to just use garden soil in a pot. If you're going to grow tomatoes in a pot, you have to grow determinate tomato varieties, which means the plant itself will only get to be 24 to 36 inches high. You plant an indeterminate one, that means that the plant is just going to grow like crazy. So for containers, you want to use determinate varieties, and then there are cherry tomatoes, there are regular tomatoes. They do pretty well in a container. Usually want to trellis them or put some kind of a restriction around them, either a tomato cage or something like that, so that they don't get too top heavy. But yeah, tomatoes can be grown in containers. Now, if you're going to try to grow them indoors in a container, you're going to have trouble. Tomatoes do not produce good pollen indoors, but there is a product called Blossom Set, which is a gibberellin. It's actually a plant hormone that you use to set the tomatoes. So if you're growing them indoors and they blossom, you treat them with this Blossom Set, and then the tomato will set. Otherwise, you'll get flowers, but the flowers will abort. They'll drop right off. So if you're going to grow them indoors, you almost have to use this gibberellin, which is called Blossom Set.
So when it comes to things like that, like these, I don't know, products more or less, are you looking for specific things maybe on the labels or anything? Or how are you trying these, I guess, before you're completely trusting them that they're safe and good to use?
The first thing is you should read a label when you're doing it. It tells you, how much to use per gallon or per square foot. The lawn fertilizers will say, so much per 100 square feet. So what you have to do is sprinkling can, you go on a driveway and see how many square feet a sprinkling can will cover, and then you put the amount of chemical in there that it says for the amount of area. So if your area is 20 by 30, that's 600 square feet. So you put in the amount that you need. A lot of the insecticides are so much per gallon. And then it tells you when the reentry time is, so, if you spray with something, it may be a 3 or 4 day reentry, so you can't enter the area or eat the vegetables for a certain amount of time, and then you have to be sure that you wash the vegetables well before you eat them. So, it's just read the label. I always tell people that. Read the label. It will tell you, and labels have to tell you everything,
They do.
So they'll when to spray, how often to spray, if you've got an insect problem or a disease problem, how many times you have to do it. All that information has to be on the label. And so read the label and you'll have good luck with the things that you use.
Got it. Perfect. Caller on line 1, welcome into Hometown Today with the Garden Doctor here on 95.3 WBEV.
Good morning. Hey, I never get my sedums transplanted in spring. Can you do that now?
Seed transplanting?
No.
Like with what?
The plant, the sedum flower plant.
Oh, the sedums.
Yeah.
Yeah, sedums can be planted right now. It can be divided right now. They're roots, actually. They're not seeds.
Right. Can I split the plants now and get them, transplant them now?
Oh,
'Cause
yes, yes. Now's the
I never
time
get-
that,
in spring,
because
I
the
never
plants
get 'em done
are
in
going
time.
dormant, if you want to divide them or you want to transplant them, now's a good time to do that.
Till when how late can you do it?
I would say until the ground freezes.
Oh, okay, and they'll come back next year.
They should, yes.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the quicker you do it now, the better.
Right.
Because then they'll have it. The roots will have a chance to reestablish, and the later you do it, with the sedums, what you should be doing is putting a mulch over top of them so that the soil stays warmer for a longer period of time, so they do have a chance to restart. But maybe I would say another three weeks or so, you'll have really good luck.
By the 1st of November.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Because I said in spring, I just never get them done in time, and now it's like, oh, I got to work on that. So,
Yep.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for calling in. Again, 920-885-4446 is the call line. 920-887-9595 is the text line. Only a couple minutes left here, so make sure to call or text in and get that question in. Otherwise, we won't be around until next week, again, on with the Garden Doctor. But then we will be replaying this episode on Saturday morning, so you can hear that again. You can always find it online at dailydodge.com, and then on YouTube as well. And then you can also find the Garden Doctor's handy tutorial videos and gardening tips and tricks on the Garden Doctor YouTube page. Is that what it's called?
The Garden Doctor channel, yeah.
The Garden Doctor, perfect. So that's all available for you. So there's a lot of resources available to really perfect your gardening.
Right now is the time to plant garlic, okay?
Oh, right.
And so if you want to see how I do it, visually, you just put in in the search bar, when you sign into YouTube, there's a search bar at the top. You put the Garden Doctor channel, and then you put garlic, and then it'll bring up all the videos that have to do with garlic, planting garlic. How you divide the bulbs, how you plant them, when you plant them, and then how you do them during the summer and stuff. So.
And I think last week with Amy, were you talking about using a drill to get the?
Yeah.
That was this guy.
Same thing with I use this for not only for planting fall bulbs, but with garlic, I make a furrow and do that. But with when I'm transplanting annuals, I dig the hole with this. When I'm transplanting tomatoes or peppers or eggplants or whatever, I use the drill to make the hole and then plant the plant in it. So the drill is one of the things that I really enjoy using in the garden. There are certain tools that you like to use, and that auger is one of them. It sometimes I think it's even getting a little rusty, but that rust is worn off when you use it. So it's a good thing.
Cool. And we got another caller on line 1. Welcome into Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV with the Garden Doctor.
Good morning. I'd like to find out when is a good time for transplanting rhubarb, or move it to a different location.
Yeah, now's the good time because the leaves are kind of drying up and dying back, and so you just dig it up and divide it and transplant it right now. And then, we talked a little bit about not mulching rhubarb. You don't need to mulch rhubarb, but if you're transplanting it right now, I would mulch with about a 10 to 12 inches of hay or straw or something that isn't going to mat down. Now, leaves, you don't want to use leaves for a mulch because they will smother it, but clean hay or straw, keep the soil warmer for a longer period of time and let the rhubarb plants establish.
Okay. Do they do better in more direct sunlight, or would it be better in a
rhubarb
shaded
loves
area,
as much sunlight as possible.
Okay.
And,
all right.
Yeah, and not a lot of competition. You want to keep the weeds away. And they are heavy feeders, so a good treatment of fertilizer or if you've got a friend that has a farm, any kind of farm manure works really well with it too.
All right. Well, thank you for the information.
Yep. Thank you for calling.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks again for calling in. Oh, good. Jack, is there another caller on the line? Oh, okay. No, there is not. So, all good. So, thanks everyone for calling in today on Hometown Today with the Garden Doctor on 95.3 WBEV. We're going to wrap it up for today. Again, I guess you should give the details, not me. I don't have all the hours.
Yeah,
right.
The store hours in Randolph are 10 to 5 Monday through Saturday, and we're not open on Sunday. The other 5 stores in Madison, Stoughton, Sun Prairie, Stevens Point, 10 to 5 Monday through Friday, 10 to 3 on Sunday.
Awesome. And are there any other? I know that. Well, I guess we should mention that it's 50% off perennials, trees, and shrubs.
Yep,
while supplies
we're still
last.
doing that, and now is a good time to get them in the ground because, and you dig a bigger hole around, but you don't want to put them much deeper. But you do want to cover the tops so that soil that's in that pot is covered. But now's a good time. We have a lot of trees that are showing their fall color, and shrubs and perennials, whatever's left over from the summer, are 50% off. So awesome. Good time to get them in the ground, and with perennials you want to mulch them right away so that they have a nice warm environment for as long as time so they get established.
Great. Well, thanks for all the information today. I've got about 2 pages of notes here that I took down, so I'll make sure to file those away for when I need them once I eventually get a yard. Because right now I don't have one at all. But that's all right here. So for Dick Zondag and Jung's Garden Center, this has been the proceeding was a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Jung's Garden Center, not WBEV, ESPN, or Good Karma Brands.